I need to stop playing such sad games. Last week, we played What Remains of Edith Finch, and this week we're playing another pretty sad indie game. This week it is Venba, and I promise I don't know what we're doing next week, but it's not going to be another sad game like this because I just can't take it. Venba is a great story about how you get adopted into a culture after you move somewhere entirely new, and it's got a couple twists in it that are pretty great. It's a nice short game if you're somebody looking for some easy achievements, but it has some great lessons in there as well. So I hope you really enjoy checking out Venba. Another important note that I want to make is that this game is all about Indian culture, and I am not Indian, so there's a lot of names and names of various foods throughout this game that I do not know how to pronounce 100% correctly, but I'm going to give it a shot, so sorry if I'm a little bit, or honestly quite a bit, off on those. I just, want to give the game the best representation that I possibly can. So the game begins with the titular character Venba sitting on the couch sick, but her husband is about to leave for work. Her husband's name is Pavelan. But he's going to be going to work without lunch if she doesn't get up to make it. So we get up to do that right now. And that's how the majority of the story of this game is told. It's throughout the cooking of these traditional Indian dishes, and they get a little bit more complicated, and it's just a really interesting way to tell the story. And we're getting the recipes from her mother's cookbook, but the cookbook's a little ripped up, so we can't quite read everything perfectly. So that's kind of the recipe for how all of these little cookbook sections work. We have some of the information that we need, but not everything. We need to kind of figure it out as we go along. So we can close the cookbook up, and then we see we have everything out that we need for the recipe out on the table, but we need to figure out how we're going to put each of the items together in the correct order for everything. And while the game lets you mess around and make mistakes a little bit, you can't ruin dinner completely, because if you make a mistake and get to the end of the recipe, they do reset back to the beginning. I don't know who's paying for that meal you're going to have to throw out, but I guess that's somebody else's problem. And after a little bit of tinkering with this first recipe, we do manage to complete it, and we earn our first achievement, Put Chutney, for completing the idli recipe. And we also see that there are some cute little faces that Venba made in the idlis, which is very sweet. After finishing up making Pavelan's lunch, we decide that Venba should go to the doctor because she's been sick for a few days now. And also, we learn that the game is taking place in Canada because healthcare is, in quotes, free here. After deciding on this doctor's trip, the next thing we see is Venba coming back home from the doctor, presumably, and she's been looking a little disheveled at this point. She was sick, right? But she's starting to get herself a little bit cleaned up. And we don't have to wait long to find out what the cause of this is, because we see Venba makes some more of the idlis, and there is now a third little face mixed in, and this is just such a very cute reveal. The last scene from this chapter of the game is one that we'll be seeing a lot. We get a lot of insight into what the characters are thinking in these little segments where they're just talking in bed at night, and here they're considering if they should move back to India. Since moving to Canada, life has been better, kind of. They're having a lot of trouble getting jobs that they would have been easily qualified for back in India, so it is a toss-up, but the baby changes things. But we quickly get a time jump and learn that they have clearly decided that staying in Canada was the right choice for them with the baby on the way, and the baby's here now. But we've really kind of skipped the baby phase, to be honest. Cavin is 5 years old now, and we get some more insight. They're still struggling to get jobs. Pavelan is trying here, he's on the phone interviewing, but it just doesn't seem to be working out for him. This section also introduces a pretty cool thing. The parents speak Tamil, but when Cavin speaks in English, the text box is a little bit harder to read, a little bit splotchier, showing kind of that disconnect that's happening between the two languages. Pavelan voices some of his frustrations about not really being able to communicate properly with the people that he's interviewing with, but Cavin doesn't have that problem. He actually has his Canadian friends calling him Cavin because it's closer to their culture. In fact, Cavin is adapting so well that he just aced the English test that he had at school. And there's a little bit of a reward attached to this. We're going to make a special dish that kind of resembles a rocket ship taking off to celebrate the big accomplishment. So just like that, we're back into the cooking minigame. I thought this recipe was a little bit easier than the first one that we took on, and I actually earned 2 achievements here. One for successfully launching the rocket, and 2 for completing a recipe without failing at any part of it right in a row. So we're at 3 achievements now. But after the celebration of the successful rocket launch, we do get into another serious bedtime conversation. Pavlon has been unable to get and keep a job that he really likes, so he's going to have to resort to asking somebody that he knows for a favor. Venba was formerly a full-time teacher, but now she's not really able to get that opportunity. She's being denied year after year, and she just isn't able to connect with the kids in the same way as back in India. And she's feeling that same rift forming with Cavin. He has been bringing his homemade lunch to school every day, but he never eats it, whether that's from embarrassment or something else. They're not really sure, but they're worried about the rift that's forming between their culture and Cavin's, as well as the culture around them, really. After that, the chapter ends, and we get another small 1-year time jump. Chapter 3 is probably one of the heavier chapters in the game, and it's the only chapter without any cooking at all. 6-year-old Cavin speaks better English and can communicate with English speakers better than adult Venba. So Cavin is on the phone with Pavlon's employer, trying to figure out something that happened. It appears to be late at night, and Pavlon hasn't come home from work yet, which is unusual. So they're kind of trying to figure out what's happening, but Pavlon never leaves with anybody. The secretary presumably says that Pavlon's quiet and should have left quite a bit earlier when all of the other sales staff left that day. So without much of a lead to follow, Venba and Cavin set off throughout a park at night to try to cross paths with where Pavlon would have probably walked on his way home. But they also get into a little bit of a conversation about why the person on the phone said that Pavlon was so quiet at work when he's so talkative at home, which kind of calls for an explanation on, the lack of communication and language barrier that Pavlon is facing outside of the home. But it's not long before Venba and Cavin find Pavlon sitting on a bench in the park, and it doesn't tell us exactly what happened, but his glasses are broken, his things are thrown on the ground, including his notably misspelled name tag, and he is visibly bleeding from the face, so we can take a pretty good educated guess on what went down here on the way home from work. And that's pretty much where we end that chapter. We earn our 4th achievement, Hair Off the Head, for finishing the park level, and then we go through another pretty big time jump, and we can see that now Cavin is actually looking kind of like an adult. Our main characters are also looking a little bit more gray than previously, but one thing that hasn't changed is we're getting right into the cooking. This is also for sure the most complicated recipe that we're going to do in this game as a celebration for Cavin going off to college, as we'll find out for this chapter. This is also the same dish that Venba's mother made the night before she left India, so some symbolism there as well. And we are rewarded for completing the hardest dish of the game with our 5th achievement, Family Beef, right here after finishing the recipe up. As the family sits down for dinner, a difference I noticed is that the adults are using their hands to eat while Cavin is using silverware, showing some more of that generational divide that we've been talking about. And we also learn that Cavin is going away to college, and he has decided at the last minute that the parents aren't going to drive him there. And he doesn't want any of the food that Venba's been preparing for him to take either, because this is his fresh start. He doesn't want to be connected to the culture that he's been so embarrassed by throughout all of his formative years of school, and so he's kind of pushing his parents away in kind of a mean-spirited way, but it's kind of just what happens at that age. And we get another very kind of sad but sweet scene as we see Venba and Pavlon looking away as Cavin leaves. We get another time jump, this one fairly large over the course of 8 years, and we are immediately hit with a gut punch as we see that Pavlon seems to have passed away in the years between the last 2 chapters. A now quite old looking Venba sits alone on a porch when she sees she gets a notification on her phone and her face just lights up. No bonus points for guessing who sent that text to her, but she's still very excited about it. So in this section, we actually cook 6 dishes, and none of them are very difficult. They're actually pretty much impossible to mess up. They're that short and easy, but she goes all out. She's really making a spread today. Like, just get a look at this dinner spread that Venba has put together for this special day. It's so special, we earn achievement number 6 right here for finishing it. This is maybe the saddest scene in gaming history. We see Venba after finishing this whole meal. The clock starts ticking forward, and no surprises here. It keeps ticking forward until night, and Venba wakes up when she gets a text on her phone. Now we can actually scroll all the way through her messages here and see that Cavin never really texts her back, and when he does, it's not super involved. While she texts him basically every day, back and forth, good morning, have a great day, good night, and nothing really is coming from Cavin. And she prepared this whole big meal from him for coming over as he said he would today, but he canceled at the last minute, and all of it was for nothing. As Venba goes to sleep alone, we get a pan over to a letter to find out that she has finally been accepted as a full-time teacher in Canada, and we earn achievement number 7, Silicon Heartbreak, for scrolling through all of the texts in Venba's phone. So when the next chapter ticks over, it's interesting that we're no longer playing as Venba. We're now actually playing as Cavin, who is texting with his boss. Cavin has followed in his father's footsteps and has become a writer, but he's writing for a TV show now, and he's being asked about some of the aspects of Indian culture that they should be including in it. But his boss isn't super responsive to his ideas. He actually brings up that he was really embarrassed of the food that he used to bring for lunch, and maybe it would be a good idea to represent that for the people that feel that same thing that he did, but ultimately his boss kind of tells him it doesn't fit the vibe, and he decides to back down on it. But we do get some instructions to go find a recipe from his childhood to be on the show. We also earn achievement number 8, Doom Scroll, for flipping through all of the texts in Cavin's phone. We learn that Venba made the decision to move back to India, and she actually left the cookbook that her mother gave her in Canada with Cavin. But she's actually fixed up some of the recipes. Though Cavin can't read Tamil super well, he can understand the basics of it. And after flipping through the book a little bit, Cavin decides that the recipe he's going to make for the show is going to be a chicken soup type recipe that his mother made for him once. So now we get to take on our first cooking challenge with Cavin instead of Venba, but this one's actually a little bit easier because Venba has taken a pass over through the book and made helpful little diagrams and things like that to help us figure out what we need to be doing. So helpful she is. And after a pretty easy time putting this recipe together, we earn achievement number 9, taking stock for finishing up the chicken soup recipe. And it looks great. And after the experience of putting this recipe together, we find that our bosses texted us asking for updates, but there's only one person on Cavin's mind that he needs to contact right now. And after one final jump between chapters, we find that we're actually in India now, because Cavin has taken the trouble to travel all the way to India to meet with Venba once again. And now it's not one of them cooking, they're actually gonna cook the dishes together, because Cavin, despite having the instruction book, is still struggling a little bit, and he does want to learn the genuine way to prepare all of these dishes that his mother used to make. So for this little cooking section, we are preparing 3 different dosa recipes, and we have Venba there guiding us every step of the way on the steps that we need to take. So we make a kind of plain one, a vegetable one, and then a meat-based one, and we put them all together to earn our achievement, Fermented Feelings, for completing all of the dosa recipes and getting the full spread laid out once again. After finishing up the cooking, we get the first heart-to-heart sit-down between Cavin and Venba that we've seen in quite a few chapters at this point. Cavin has brought the recipe book back from Canada, and he's finished fixing up all of the recipes that Venba didn't, and they're in Tamil. Cavin tells his mother that he's actually quit his TV show writing job because while doing the research for this Indian character that he was writing, it made him kind of take stock of his life and the things that he was afraid of, and he hasn't been representing the culture until it was convenient for him. And Venba counters with some good points of her own. She loved India, and she left for Cavin. But she tried to raise Cavin like they were still in India while they were in Canada. The culture was completely different, and she was suffocating him, trying to make him see the value of the culture that they came from, but he just wasn't getting it. And I know that I missed some of the intricacies of this story and the relationship here, but we do end with a nice moment between mother and son. And that's where the game leaves us. It's a pretty quick 2-hour game, but we do have a couple more achievements that we need to bang out here, so let's go ahead and grab those real quick, and then after that we can get into some more of my thoughts about the game and some more appreciation that I have for what this game is doing. So the first thing worth noting for the achievements that we missed is that each of the recipes has these little flavor text things you can look at that I completely missed, and also we need to go back and do all of the recipes through one time perfectly each, so it's not a super big deal anyway. But we can't skip right to the perfect recipes. First, we have to earn achievement number 11, Vada Poche, for launching an incomplete rocket that fails and just crumbles. So after that rocket failure, we go through all of the chapters and end up back at the final chapter once again, where we earn achievement number 12 for completing the vegetable dosa without any of the green chilies on it. And I didn't really intend to do it this way, but I actually earn our 3 final achievements in one swoop after finishing the final level once again for reading all of the flavor text and all of the other text message documents, and completing every recipe without making any mistakes at all throughout the whole game. And that's Venba done 100%. Let's get into my thoughts about it. So I said this at the top of the video, but I'd like to emphasize it again. I am not of the culture that the game is targeting, but I felt very strongly about this game. I love that games have this kind of space to do this weird stuff that you wouldn't have seen a couple years ago, and it's really, really adventurous, and I'm very happy that games are kind of making art like this these days. And I'd also like to say, again, I'm not from this culture, so if anybody watching this video has any insight into this kind of person immigrating to a new country with the thought of raising kids lifestyle, I'd love to hear those comments if you want to leave those. This is another game where the gameplay isn't super important. The cooking aspects are very cool. There's not a lot of games that do stuff like this. But the things in this game, the things that they're doing, the way that you're cooking to build the story, and then the story is happening throughout these time jumps are just so cool. The art is great, very minimal cast. You only see the 3 family members on the screen at any time, other than like the art in the background, and I guess if you want to count the mask as a character, but no real speaking lines there. And also no voice acting, so if you're somebody that just wants to read through the game, you can do that pretty quickly. You can get all of the achievements in this game pretty easily, honestly, but if you're skipping through the story, you will really be missing out because this game is something special. It got nominated at the Game Awards earlier last year, 2023, and honestly, having played it now in 2024, man, what a game. It should have been mentioned a lot more. I really didn't see much of it until the Game Awards last year, so really that is my bad. But yeah, if anybody has any comments on the story of this game, or anything about this game, or any other game you want to see me play, leave a comment about those. I always love to read and respond to the comments that you guys leave. And other than that, please, if you enjoyed, like, subscribe. I am very happy to see all of that interaction, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy the next one as well. See ya!